that consistency will always win against intensity. Always remember progress beats perfection. And never forget, fundamentals will always win over fashion. So whatever's in fashion, it will always come back to fundamentals. Your goals and your dreams don't really care how you feel.
Okay, guys, and welcome back to the Golf Asylum Podcast, episode 6, with a great friend of mine. This is going to be a treat for you guys. It is, selfishly, this is going to be a huge treat for me. I have not caught up with a long-time friend, Kevin Craggs, in a long time. Guys, Kevin is the director of golf at the IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. Kevin and I go back, my goodness, at least 15 years. No, way longer than that, Kev. It's got to be closer to 20 years.
22 years, I calculated.
Oh, my God. That is unbelievable. I can't even believe it. I've said that there. 22 years. Well, but it's great to see you. How are things down there?
Wonderful. Fantastic. It's great to see that you're doing fantastic. I've been following your progress over this last 22 years. Super proud of you, young man. And it just reminds me I'm obviously getting older.
Oh, man. I'll tell you what, I've just had a moment to myself there just as we've said that. Yeah, you and I connected many, many moons ago. We were both doing some work out of Linlithgow at the academy, Robert Arkley's academy there at the golf centre. And yeah, we've stayed close ever since. We've stayed connected. We share a love for golf, and we also share a love for boxing. And that brings us to some text exchanges on a Saturday night as cards are on. So we both love it. Kev, for those who maybe aren't as familiar with your story, let's do a little background on sort of yourself and a little bit of your own history, Kev.
So, to be honest, let's start off with the golf. I was introduced to golf by my father at 11 years old. At the time, I was living in a place called Shropshire. My father was stationed in the RAF at RAF Cosford. So I grew up playing most of my golf in Shropshire, and it was an interesting thing because golf wasn't really truly my passion, but I was good at it. Boxing was my passion. And my father said, listen, you can stay better looking for longer if you play golf and boxing. And at the time I was going to the boxing gym, and my dad said that I was going to be selling more advertising on the bottom of my shoes than I was actually standing up. So I kind of pursued golf, got very good quickly, and went to Q school. I didn't get my tour card, but really had an appetite to say, this is what I want to do. So I spent 6 years on and off playing different tours. And then my wife had our first child, Ben, and she said to me, it's about time you got a proper job. And, I did. And I got into coaching. And it's quite interesting that when you go into coaching, whilst you can play the game, communicating the game to others is completely different. And we've seen that. We've seen many great players who I've had the privilege to work with and be around, don't always communicate the game very well, or how to play. A lot of them, they know what they know, but they don't know how to communicate it. But I seem to have this gift or luck that I could communicate the game quickly. So I became recognised quickly in the coaching space. I moved to Scotland, which is, my home, and to be honest, I got recognised by the Scottish Golf Union. I was made the Scottish national coach for the SLGA. Spent 10 years working with the SLGA, SGU, performance side. Had some wonderful memories, creating some great individuals, great teams. And while I was doing so, I then started to get attracted by PGA Tour pros, LPGA players, and I spent the rest of my time out on tour. And that's been an incredible time. It got 10 years working with some of the best in the world, which was fantastic. But it comes a point that I got home after a 6-week trip, and my wife says to me, she said, "Do you know the name of your daughter's school teacher?" And I said, "I don't." "Do you know your daughter's, what she does before she goes to bed?" And I realized quickly time was moving on, and I was dedicating everything towards my career and others except my family. So that was a bit of a waking call. So at the time, I was working with Paula Creamer, and there was this huge vocation, also persuasion from others that I should come to America. And at the time, IMG knew I was looking for something. They reached out, and it was a great exercise because I was starting to move more towards coach development and people development. And here I am at IMG. It will be 6 years in June. It's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. I've got to work with the next generation leaders, next generation golfers. At the same time, I've developed a workforce from about 12 coaches to 30 coaches, and as I start to graduate to the last 5 holes of my career, I start to look now what's next, and really it's more into leadership, people development, and speaking. So it's amazing how we evolve. So that's where I am right now.
Kev, how do you reflect on that now that you talk about you're putting in this sort of sweat equity into you and your brand and your knowledge and your insight, but for every experience you have to pay a cost, a price, right? And in that price, it some part was the time with Ellie, with Ben, and just at home and just being around them. How do you reflect on sort of paying a price in that regard now?
I think initially, if we take the emotional side, there's some regret. But I always think, I remember my granny saying there's 2 days in the year that count for nothing. And that's yesterday and tomorrow. And I think all these things that, in terms of the emotional side of where I should be and what I should have done, spending time with the family, I don't look at it as a regret. I look at it as it was an opportunity that provided stability for my children, stability for me. At the same time, it afforded me to grow. So when I reflect on that, I think whether you're in sport, business, whatever you're trying to do, if it's trying to be a better version of yourself, there has to be some level of sacrifice. And I try to not even use a word like sacrifice, is choosing to embrace the opportunity. So I took those things, I looked at them as opportunity, and I look at the person that I am now, and I look at the children that I have now who have got values and things, and it's all been a very positive product. But I think if you want anything in life, you're faced with a choice, and you can say, well, I can choose to be comfortable, or I've got to step outside my comfort zone. And we know, and we've heard it a million times with Facebook quotes and great stoicism, is you cannot be anything unless you get outside your comfort zone. And I was going outside my comfort zone. And here I am at 55 years old, continually trying to push myself outside my comfort zone, still going to the boxing gym, thinking I'm Sugar Ray Shortbread and bouncing about, and just this huge passion to keep growing, Yeah,
I love that. And I selfishly asked that, Kev, because, as somebody that I've looked up to for a long, long time, I kind of find myself in somewhat of a similar position with 2 little kids at home, 3 and 5 years old. And I look at the opportunities that pull me to different places around the world, and different things like that. And, I can often sit with myself at times and go, what price are you paying for this? When I look at the opportunity and I go, okay, maybe 5 to 10 years ago, you had to consider other things when assessing these opportunities. Now I have to assess other things when looking at these opportunities, and those little monkeys are the number one thing that I have to think of. And I'm almost looking for some sort of advice and that front as to how you sort of reflected on it and how you sort of squared that circle for yourself.
I think it's a question. I think at some point, and it's interesting that if I go back 22 years and remember the young you, I think the wants and wishes of that young boy are very different to the wants and wishes now. And I often talk about this. There are 4 primary wants and wishes that are attached to everything in life. If we listen to other people speak, if our listeners just stop for a second and reflect on this, every want, desire, or wish will be attached to one of these 4 things. And the first thing is, we in our wants and desires, we're either seeking approval, control, connection, or security. Now, what's interesting, as we go through life, things change. As you get older, security becomes really important, particularly when you have children. Security in your relationships, security in your finances. When you were that 22-year-old boy, you weren't caring about security. You were all about control. You were looking to be approved. I want people to know my worth. And you were trying to grow connections. So as you go through life, things change. But for me, I always work with 3 pillars, no matter what I do. And I think we can apply this to every age and stage. First of all, whatever decision or opportunity that you embrace, always look at the clarity. First and foremost, why? Why am I even considering this? What is it going to do for me or benefit? How is it going to help others? Once you've decided it's the right thing to do, the conviction is absolutely critical. Okay, so how are you going to convict to it? How are you going to commit to it? And understand that along this clarity and conviction, there's a level of adaptability. You're going to have to pivot because you've got now different wants and desires, different responsibilities. So if you can be clear on what you want to do and clear on your why, and then commit and convict to those decisions and that decision, but be prepared that there will be some adaptability in terms of you being away from home, or maybe communication is going to be a bit different. But understand, if the why is right there at the front, that adaptability and conviction is way easier.
I love that. So I want to kind of dive into the sort of the memory banks a little bit. Of all the things you've done, Kev, of all the experiences and players you've worked with, what are the ones that, if you sit and reflect over a cup of tea, you know, you catch yourself in the lounge on a Sunday afternoon and you just shut your eyes and think back, what are the most memorable moments for you over the last, 25 years plus of coaching?
That's a tough question, because it's like, wow, it's like going back to the black and white days. And, and I've been so privileged to encounter so many different people. Been given so much opportunity, been told so many wise words. It's hard, but to answer the question, close my eyes. I think really from, I think Seve, meeting Seve and staying with Seve was for me an incredible, humbling moment, because Seve Ballesteros was my hero growing up. He was an incredible character, 5 major winner. Spanish, volatile, very, very unique. Was he the best player? I don't know. Certainly one of the best golfers of all time. And when I say the best player, you say, well, how can you say Seve wasn't the best player? I suppose 5 majors is a great victory, but I felt that he could have won a lot more. We know that there was problems with his driving. He had an incredible short game. But the reason why that memory is so special is because it was more than just learning about the golf and the golf stories. It was about learning about him and some of the advices that he had for me. And most of our advices are from our own mistakes. As I often say to people, I'm quite well experienced. My mother would say you've made a load of mistakes, but that's her opinion. Okay, we differ on that. But Seve kind of told me a lot of stories that I carry through now. And one of those stories was to always be sure of who you are and be honest. And he quoted, an old Confucius quote, I think it was, which was, if it's not right, don't do it. And if it's not true, don't say it. And he was hugely big on that. And it's these small moments, these small nuggets are, if it's right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. Within the coaching industry, at times you find yourself doing the easy thing, not the right thing. At times you find yourself not telling the truth entirely because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings, or you want to encourage or empower. And then, it's not untrue, but it's a negotiation. And that really stuck with me. And that was a big memory. And I think another memory for me was a mentor who sadly isn't here, and it was a guy called Steve Black. And Steve Black was like a friend, a father figure, a mentor. He was incredible. And he taught me about hope. And he said, listen, hope is really important. And I remember him giving me a business card, and it didn't have his name on it, it just had hope and this contact number. And I said, so what is hope? And he says, well, if you break the word down, it means helping other people excel. And you truly are a coach, and you truly are a teacher or a manager or a mentor when you really understand that your vocation and passion is delivering hope. When you really want to help other people excel. And excel in being more polite, excel in getting the right shaft or the right club, or getting someone to hit the ball or pot or chip better. So those are 2 things that strike me. Seve's words and Steve's words were incredible to me. Amongst many, I'd be here all day telling you so much, but those are 2 particular ones that helping other people excel, and if it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it.
I love that. Yeah, those are often difficult ones to sort of pinpoint. I mean, when your thoughts go back to all the different experiences and you got to select the one or two, but yeah, I love that. I mean, I knew Seve would come up for you, and those sort of famous or those times. I remember seeing the pictures years ago of the two of you working, and I could only imagine as times went on, and I've kind of grown to appreciate what that must have been like more. Seve was still at the latter end of his career when I first sort of get into golf, and he was sort of flagging a little bit in his playing career. I remember seeing him over at Loch Lomond, and he was still Seve, but on the golf course it was not what he once was. But now when you hear people, every time the Ryder Cup rolls around and you hear about the impact that he had on all of these people, I mean, what a legacy to have left, that you can impact people in such a positive way. And it's inspiring, it really is, to kind of know that a human is capable of that, of leaving an imprint on so many people in such a positive way that you can inspire once you're gone.
That's a great point. And we all think we have to be famous or we have to be a name. The answer's no, because you right now don't know who you're inspiring. I don't know who I'm inspiring. There are many people that you've been inspired by to make decisions or choices, or even picking clothes or picking a car or whatever decision. Someone's inspired you, but that person doesn't know they've inspired you. So we're inspiring people in our own ways. And I think the point that you made there was, I think everyone who has a passion to help or make people feel better tries to leave a footprint in cement and not sand. Sand washes away. What Seve was able to do, which was incredible, was to make you feel $1 million. And I think, if you're working with a coach or working with anybody in your life, if they make you feel better than you did when you first arrived, that's a genuine person.
That's incredible, isn't it? What a gift. Kev, if I reflect back on, I want to touch on Scottish golf for a second, because I'll be honest, this is one that as time has went on, is kind of, as it sat with me, it's bothered me. And when I was writing out sort of some thoughts of some of the things that we would chat about today, this was one of the ones I had to have on the list. And I want to discuss with you why you think Scotland has struggled to produce golfers at the top level of the game. If I think about it over the last, call it 20 years, right? So we've got a little timeline of Richie Ramsey winning the US Amateur in 2006. We've got the Eisenhower champions of 2008. We had, I think, Wallace Booth. We had Callum McCauley and Gavin Deere. I think Gavin was the other one in 2008. But if we look at the game, post Monte, obviously Paul Lawrie was incredible for those number of years. We've struggled. We're the sort of home of golf. We are the sort of the history of the game. Why have we struggled so much with that?
I think it's an incredible question. You've always been harsh on Scottish golf, and rightly so. And that's something that you've stepped forward, and you've always been very passionate about. We could do better, and why we're not doing better. And that was something that you and I had conversation when I was national coach. Why aren't we doing better, Kevin? This is great. Mm-hmm. I think when we look back, if we look to recent times, we've got Bob McIntyre in the top 20 in the world. We've just had Callum Hill win there the week before in Joburg. You've got Ewan Ferguson.
Brilliant.
If I was going to be super harsh, and I'd probably get shot for this, but I'm going to say it anyway, is the DP World Tour or the European Tour as it was, is it as strong as it used to be? And the answer is no, it isn't. You think about the days of Monty, Stanley Lyle, Sam Torrance, Ian Woosnam, some of the great names. You had a lot of the top 10 players in the world playing on the European Tour. A lot of the top 10 players don't play on the DP World Tour. So is it watered down? Is it a pumped up corn ferry? I don't know. But that's not the question. The question is why Scotland? Well, first of all, the size of Scotland. The size of Scotland is a challenge. I think the weather and climate is not an excuse, but it's a valid reason. Mm-hmm. In terms of infrastructure, I think this is where the challenge begins. that we should be doing better as a country. We are the home of golf, and that's where the problem starts. We pride ourselves so much on tradition, and we don't necessarily really respect progression. And there's the key. The rest of the world, like Latvia, Germany, also Croatia, Finland, these were the kind of teams that were sometimes beating us in European championships. And I was like, my God, alive, how can Latvia or Croatia outschool us? And the fact of the matter is, they were a progressive country. They were almost naive. We pride ourselves, St. Andrews is the home of golf. We've got Muirfield, Carnoustie. I mean, there's so much heritage and history. How progressive are we? And, I think the Scottish Golf Union did a brilliant job when they introduced the Scottish Institute of Sport. They brought sports science into it. They started to look at the package of nutrition, mental performance. They started to look at tactics and strategy. And I think winning the World Team Championships doesn't come around very often. And I think winning on a whole, I would say that any golfer at top level gets 4 or 5 opportunities a year to win, if they're lucky, and to cross that line. So winning's harder than people give credit for, particularly at top level. Should Scotland be doing better? I would say so, yes. And I think we have to look at the next generation of why. And I don't think it's just Scotland. I think it's the world. I think right now it's never been easier to make it in sport than ever before. And I tell you why. This generation gets a tough time on them. They're not this and they're not this. The generation's a lot wiser and smarter than our generation. However, this generation lacks resilience. They love the idea of being successful, but hate the process of getting there. That's where the problem starts, because all the names that you've named previously have been prepared to sacrifice, embrace the opportunity, make commitments, adapt, and follow the process to the end. Whereas we're looking at our new generation, and the one thing that is missing is this level of resilience. And if you take resilience, and we can say, well, what is resilience? In my mind, it's the gap between knowing and not knowing. And the longer you can sit in that gap and tolerate that gap, the more successful you can be. The fact of the matter is, a lot of this young generation, like the golfers in Scotland, in the rest of the world, don't want to tolerate it. They're not resilient enough. They want a quick fix, fast way. I want it fun, fast and easy to get there. We know anything worth having doesn't work that way. And I don't think it's Scotland. I think it's society right now,
Yeah, no, I think has some brilliant points on character traits and kind of not what we need to be, but who we need to be, in order to be successful. And I think that's super important. I think Scotland is a little country, and whether we look at football, whether we look at golf, and I think our Scandinavian friends at times will show us the examples of what we could be, though. That's always where I go to, and I look at what Sweden can produce with a Ludvig Åberg or the Rasmus and Nikolai Højgaard in Denmark, and the brilliant sort of golfers that have come out of there. I wonder about the incubator of golf and sort of our ability to sort of harness the talent that we've got. I mean, I think a Bob McIntyre as an example is a brilliant one, because I think Bob has made it in spite of his surroundings, not because of his surroundings. He has a will to win. I look at him on the golf course, and you sort of look at the physical elements and say, well, Bob doesn't look like a top 10 player in the world in waiting, but he is. He's ready to take that next. I think he's ready to take that next step, and I think he can be as good as a Tyrrell Hatton. I think he can play at that type of level, at that top end. And I look at the Martin Lairds and the Russell Knox of the world, and those boys were successful, but they had to go to the US, go through the college system, and I think part of it, when I look back on Scottish golf, Kev, I think, how do we prepare? Do we set people up for success? Does the Lytham Trophy and the St Andrews, Trophy and all these sort of events, do they set golfers up for tour success? Because success on the links, in the Brabazon Trophy or whatever, these UK-based events are, we've got to flight the ball down. you've got to play difficult conditions. And you know, and I know that from sort of some of the boys I grew up with, when they got to playing higher level golf and you've got to play the ball in the air much more than you do on the ground, they really struggled with that. And I just wonder if you know, we are setting golfers up for success beyond amateur level.
I mean, that's a great way of looking at it. And I think you've made some incredible valid points, but we think of at the top end of the game, 43% of the game's made up of putting. I think if you look at most conditions of putting greens in Scotland aren't the best when you compare them to the rest of the world. Now we're already behind, you know, the wicket because we don't have the conditions. Now, okay, is that a reason? Excuse, Bob McIntyre came through anyway. Yeah. But I think the success in the likes of Bob and those who've gone on, like Sandy Lyle and Monty, who has an incredible 57 wins and Ryder Cup record that's just phenomenal. Ryder Cup captain, that was just the way he captained it. I watched that preparation up to that and was very close to him. It was just phenomenal, great leadership skills. But what was interesting is those who go on to do know who they are. They know their DNA. And if you look at Bob got lost there for a wee while. He just got just lost. And he started to hit the curious and search button. And everyone's got a piece of advice. Everyone knows what he's supposed to be doing. The person that knows what he's supposed to be doing is him. Right. And now he's gone back to doing what he does best. He's not a guy that you're going to see 7 days in the gym. He's not a guy that's going to be standing weighing his food in the morning or meal prepping. Okay, that's who you are. But what he can do, he can come down on a Sunday afternoon down the straight and handle pressure and loves pressure and loves the opportunity of pressure. And that's where he's brilliant. You know, you can have the best prepped body, you can have the best prepped swing, you can be able to, but if you can't produce it under pressure, but going back to the incubator, the question is let me reverse the question to you, is why aren't we doing the same with Scottish football? Why can't we produce a Scottish football team? Why can't we produce a Scottish rugby team? You know, but we can produce a curling team. Mm-hmm. So I think there's also culture things as well. I think we can look at the environment as a culture. I mean, you know, Scottish culture, I'm super proud of it. I'm traditional. You and I bleed it, and we will never be any different. But at times when you look at the rest of the world, we should take more time in our health. We should look after ourselves in terms of our mind and our well-being. And it's a bit more than that. But I think for Scotland to keep producing more winners, there's got to be more opportunity for the young coming through. There's got to be coaching opportunity for them. There's got to be tournament opportunity, mixed tournaments. I think what Scotland do better than anyone is I do think having these match plays and foursomes and the different formats. When I moved to America, everything's stroke play. Everything. So people don't learn how to be aggressive. Match play is a wonderful game. You know this yourself when you played it, you know, at kind of sort of level yourself. Match play teaches you to be aggressive. If you don't play match play, you never learn to be aggressive. Look how many chip-ins and hole-outs you have in the Ryder Cup. Why is that? It isn't the event. It's the format that produces that.
I love that. Yeah, no, it's so true, Kev. Did you always know that you would leave Scotland? Did you always know that you had to look outside of Scotland to reach your goals and your sort of, coaching potential?
To be honest, I mean, I've been in the United States now for 6 years and I miss it every day. I mean, I just had smuggled black pudding put in last week. I don't know where you saw my black pudding and my egg and my bacon.
I saw that.
I miss Scotland every single day. When I touch base with, friends back home, I miss it every single day. And, would I go back? Of course I'd go back tomorrow. I love it. But as a career perspective, it wasn't a smart move. I'd hit the ceiling. I had nowhere to go. I was national coach. I was recognised as one of Scotland's top coaches. For me, I had to decide, was I going to remain this big fish in a tiny little pond, or was I going to try and conquer something a bit bigger and grow? And I just felt that if I was really going to leave any legacy or learn any more, I needed to step outside that. So, you're never going to be anyone who is passionate about their own country, who loves Scotland, bleeds Scotland. But at the time, I felt like, I feel I've outgrown it at this point.
I felt the same, Kev. I felt the same. I knew inside me fairly early on in the sort of growth at TaylorMade and sort of going through the club fitting side of things, I kind of looked over at how things were being done over here, and Cool Clubs really were the first to do the sort of brand agnostic club fitting thing, and I looked at it over here and thought, it's just different over there. That's, the way they do things, the opportunities, the being close enough to the OEMs over in Carlsbad that you can get access to this information and knowledge. We'll always be getting second and third hand information, and I don't want that. I want first hand information. I want to be the source, not the person who's getting it watered down somewhere, down the information funnel line. So I was curious on that one. How do you feel like as a coach you've evolved over the past sort of 10 years? So just prior to moving to the US versus, the coach that you are today, how have you evolved?
I think the person that I was even 5 years ago is very different now. And I go back to those wants and desires of control, connection, approval, and security. I think my desires are very different now. I don't seek approval, even though it's nice to be said, hey, you're doing a good job. I don't seek it. I do look for connections and connecting back with old friends like this. That's important to me. Security, life's been good, so I'm secure. And, the end of the day is I want to be in control of my own growth. I still have the same passion as I was 21 to grow. How have I evolved? Well, if I could, being the acronym king as I am, I break it down into 5 primary letters. If we look at the word coach, I've evolved as the first letter C. I've evolved as a communicator. I've learned how to communicate. I've learned how to ask the right questions. I've learned to listen with my eyes, not just my ears. So communication has evolved. Organization. The higher responsibility you have, you've got to be organized. You've got to be prepared. People have a comfort when you're ready and prepared. You've seen this in the incredible businesses you've created and the incredible brand you've created and the person you become. A lot of that is because you're organized, you're prepared, and people feel comfort in someone that's organized. And that's something either responding to emails or responding to requests or whatever. So organization's important. Adaptability. I've learned to adapt. I've learned to realize not everyone sees things the way I see it. When you're young, you've got these high opinions of self and high opinions of what you know. And I think what I've done is as I've evolved to where I am now, I've realized that it's important to adapt. Not everyone sees the game or sees the world as you see it. And when you have a golf swing or a person that stands in front of you, you've got to have that adaptability. People respond to different ways. And if you have that, if you can do that through coaching, communication and organization, that supports adaptability. Next C, competence. You've got to be competent, because if you're not competent, you can't be confident. And competence only comes from learning your craft, investing in yourself, investing time in studying and working and taking those sacrifices, as we call opportunities. Competence comes from effort. You can't be, when you're competent at something, you're confident. But people are often confident when they're not competent. So I've evolved in my competence of what I know, what I need to know, and accept I don't know what I don't know. And the last one that puts it together, the H, is be honest. Be honest with others, but be honest with self. And at times that when you're trying to break your career and you're looking for the want and desire of approval, sometimes you're not honest with yourself. Yeah, I can do that. I can coach on tour, and I can fix your swing. And yeah, I'm the problem solver. And really, you're not. But you're so afraid to let someone down that in the event of it, you're not honest with self. So as I've evolved, I've learned to say, hey, I can't do this because that's not in my remit, or I don't have the qualifications to do that or the skills, but I know someone that has. And I think when you're honest with people and being honest with, telling people where they are, sometimes you're not popular. I've done it with tour players. I did it with Scottish golfers. I do it every day. I do it with coaches that, sometimes their ambition and abilities mixed up. And your goal in being honest in an empathetic, encouraging, and educational fashion, you've got to close the gap. Because if someone is not aware of actually where they are, they will, they're always going to have a problem. So you need to be honest. I mean, how many people have come to you and said, yeah, I hit my driver 300 yards, and they stand in front of you and they've got a 94 club head speed hitting it sideways? Well,
yeah,
I've got to be honest with you. You know, you know, as long as, you know, you've got a hole in your backside, you hit the ball like a, you know, you can't hit a ball, you know, what do they say? You can't hit a ball with a banjo or something like that. So the fact of the matter is, you've got to be honest. So when I break all that down, how have I evolved? I've improved in communication, organisation, adaptability, competence and honesty, which forms the letters of coach. And I truly think if I exercise those 5 elements, that I keep evolving as a coach.
It's an incredible structure to kind of keep around you, and almost a framework for your own success, to know that, you know, am I ticking all those boxes? You know, am I sort of living up to my own sort of standards? I think that's a brilliant way to sort of keep yourself in line and in check, Kev. Let's pivot. Let's talk a little boxing for a second. We can't not. Where are we in the state of boxing right now? What are we up to with the Saudi, with Turkey Al Sheikh and all the Saudi money, and where are we at in the landscape? Are things as good as they say? Is this a bubble that could burst and boxing could be left back to square one? What do you see?
Well, I mean, there's a boxing enthusiast, as someone who still bounces around with a pair of gloves. I mean, I
do the same.
I love it. I'm passionate about it. I can be spotted out on a Saturday with my Canelo shirt and my fan club, and you know, where is boxing right now? I think boxing is in a great spot because you've got, you know, Turkey Al Sheikh putting on fights that we were never going to see. I mean, we're going to see Crawford and Canelo. Would that ever have happened?
Not a chance.
You know, the Fury Usyk. Would we ever have seen that again? You know, I mean,
that's back to back,
and then we're starting to look at, you know, I think boxing is, you know, whether we like it or not, money drives boxing. Yeah. And I think he realizes that in the game of boxing, we got guys like Mayweather and Pacquiao. Fight happened 10 years way too late. Yeah. You know, so now we're seeing the fights that we want, and you know, fighters are realizing now, thankfully, that they can go in, they can make some good money, and leave in a condition that's healthy. You look at George Groves, you look at Carl Froch, they're able to put sentences together. Unfortunately, you guys like Fraser, Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Robinson, all the old timers that fills my wall, Jack Dempsey, all these wonderful people. Unfortunately, they were abused by managers. They came and left with no money and also brain damage. At least boxing now has got the boxer financially and well-being at heart. I mean, the big talk on is it a big fight? It's an interesting fight. Is Conor Benn and Eubank? I mean, which corner do you sit in? You know, and I think it's going to be sold well. And I think again, would that fight have happened otherwise? You know,
not a chance.
Not a chance.
Not a chance. I mean, I think at the time when that first started talking about, I think probably Eubank had stepped up to 168 to fight in the boxing World Super Series, fighting against Groves and Arthur Abraham and those types of guys. And Ben was coming through as a light welterweight at 140, 28 pounds of difference. I mean, and a little funny story for the listeners. When you and I embarked on a sort of period of coaching together, when I was a young buck with big ideas and intentions, our very first session working together, you gave me a pair of boxing gloves, invited me around the house, and you gave me a pair of boxing gloves. And I went, Kev, what's this? And you said, well, if you're ever going to trust me what I tell you about your golf swing, we have to build that together. So we're going to go and we're going to spar, we're going to do some boxing training. And if you can trust me after sort of putting on the gloves and we do a bit of sparring, you'll trust anything I have to tell you about the golf swing. And it was a real lesson to me, Kevin. I've kept it with me forever that, you know, you've got to build that trust, and how you build that trust is very important, and being creative about it, not just thinking that you'll be given trust, but, you know, building that trust together. And it's always stayed with me.
It's interesting. I remember that day, because you're a boxing fan and you love it. You train, and by the way, you're very good at it. But the one thing is I always think there's people who don't like boxing for what it stands for and what it is, but there's a huge correlation between boxing and golf, believe it or not. And the boxing ring's an incredible spot because when you step into that ring, it's where two people have an honest conversation and then shake hands at the end of it. Remarkable. Remarkable.
It is.
Two people can have an honest conversation. Where there's a similarity is you can have the best team around you, but when that bell rings, you're on your own. Ain't no one going to help you. When you stand on that first tee, ain't no one going to help you. You're on your own. Right. When you get punched in the mouth and you lose your temper and you think, right, you're going to get hit more. When you make bogeys and you lose your temper, you're going to make more bogeys. So the correlation of controlling your emotions and controlling who you are. So I've used boxing, I still do in my coaching nowadays, not from the aspects of the fighting aspects, but it's a great way to see how someone can control their emotions. It's a great way, physical conditioning, and it builds mental toughness and resilience. Because your brain, as you know, there's nothing more. If any listeners that haven't tried it, go hit a bag for 3 minutes. It's the longest 3 minutes of your life. And your brain is just telling you constantly, stop.
Quit.
The resilience and the mental toughness is built up from that, which is great for life and great for any sport.
Yeah, it's a brilliant one, actually. I love boxing, but I maybe hadn't ever joined those, maybe made that connection in that same way as how you've just explained it, and in almost, two sports in parallel, that whether you're standing facing your opponent in the other corner of the ring or standing that first tee, as you say, the realization of honesty. Have I put the work in? Have I put in the yards on the road? Have I put in, if I hit enough golf balls and worked on enough to kind of get through this tournament, this round? You have that realization in boxing and in golf.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, you'll quickly get found out. The people on the first tee or that tournament, if you haven't put the hard work in, you'll get found out. And you will in the boxing ring. The one thing is, in the boxing ring, there's time to defend and time to take your opportunities to strike. Is that not the same on the golf course? If you've got water,
really
190 yards wind against on a par 3, just find the green. Don't go pin hunting. So if you're standing there and then the guy's throwing jabs at you, just stay out the way. Just keep your range. So there's so many correlations. And my great friend Johnny Nelson, who was a 7-time world champion, I spent a lot of time with Johnny and taught him to play golf and still speak. And Nigel Ben gave Nigel some golf lessons, wonderful.
Wow.
Sugar Ray Leonard, back and forward. So being involved in that. And the worst thing about this, I've got to tell you the story really quickly. So the moment Canelo turned pro, I was actually the Canelo fan. I don't think there's not one fight I've not seen or watched. Every time he fights, I've got my gloves by the side of me with my Canelo hat and my T-shirt. I even want to name my next dog Canelo. I'd said something bad, but so I'm a Canelo fan. And I know that he's a keen golfer, and I've just got to get root to him. So my son last year is playing in Vegas at a beautiful golf course out there, and he comes out the toilet and bangs into this short guy and says, I'm really apologise, turns, and it's Canelo on the Sunday after his fight on the Saturday. And he said, is there any chance I can get a picture? And then so there's this picture. My son can have a great conversation. And I just said, did you mention if your dad? And he was like, no, not at all. Did you tell him I was a fan? He said, no, not at all. I said,
Benny.
I said, Ben, that's it. The deal's off now. Anything you want, the deal's off. So there's a beautiful picture now in my lounge of Ben and Canelo talking. But he said that it was quite remarkable how small he was, how humble he was. And that's the beautiful thing, is to be so great, to be so good. And this is where Seve is, and this is where I think all young people need to be. If you're going to win or you're going to be successful, be humble in doing so. If you're a successful business person, be humble in doing so. I mean, and that's where I admire you, young man. You've grown to success. You've grown as a person, and I'm super proud of you, of how you've evolved. But you know what I'm super proud of more than anything is how humble you've remained throughout the process.
Thank you, Kev. Well, it means a lot, and I'll always say, I've had people who have shown me how to be that way, and you're one of them. You're someone I've always stayed close with, and you've walked the path before me, and I've always looked up to you, and there's a few other people. So I always think mentorship is an incredible thing, and you're an incredible mentor. What you do and sort of how you sort of embrace the role I think that's a big thing, and sort of you spend time and are thoughtful about, who you are and the impact you have, especially, whether it's with me as a young kid coming up with aspirations in the game and showing me the way and teaching me these life lessons that stick with me, all these years on. And you're doing the same thing every day down at the IMG Academy. So, I'm very, very thankful to you, Kev, for the sort of impression you've left in my life.
Awesome. And I always remember, I think I told you this first out, but you've had so much information over the years, you would have forgot it. And it was at our first encounter. And in that first encounter, I remember there was so much I was telling you. At the time, I was kind of breaking out into my mentoring. So I was at that stage of, it isn't about telling you the right stuff, it's telling you as much stuff. And that's what happens when you start out coaching or start a new part, is I need to tell someone how much I know. And I think this is a great close for the listeners, which is always remember this, that consistency will always win against intensity. Always remember progress beats perfection. And never forget, fundamentals will always win over fashion. So whatever's in fashion, it will always come back to fundamentals. And, when we have these aspirations, and we hope we've empowered some of the listeners here today, but just remember, your goals and your dreams don't really care how you feel.
I love it. Well, I really hope there's a lot of people listening to this, and in whatever position you are in life, whether golf is a recreational hobby, whether it's something that you're looking at as a career path. And I think there's a little good mix of all of that who follow us in our content, Kevin. I think there'll be some really great life lessons that people will take, away from this today. And, guys, I really sort of want you to follow Kev and his journey. Other than social media and on social media, Kev, where can people find your work? Tell me, in fact, the new book, that's what I want people to sort of look at. Tell me a little bit about that.
So the book is out on Amazon, and me being
right.
me, I didn't want to create a book that you run front to back. That would be so simple. So I created a book. It's called You Are Where Your Feet Are. Based on what my granny's statement was, there are only 2 days in the year that don't count, which is tomorrow and yesterday. And so right now, your feet are here and my feet are here, and we need to embrace this moment. So the book really is about creating some habits. And the unique side of it, it is a fun, fast, easy read, but you don't read it from front to back. You just pick a page, you rip the page out. It sets you with an insight and a task for the day or a task for the month. You can tear the page out and share it. Now, when you ask someone to tear a page out of a book, it's like, oh my word. The goal is that tear is merely an act of a contract with yourself. Because the amount of times we tell ourselves, oh, I need to do this today and I'm going to do this, and we don't. And then we make a wonderful reason that's merely an excuse. But when you tear that page out and you put it, somewhere where you can see it, the end of the day or the end of the week, did you follow through and do it? And there's holding that level of accountability. So it's fun, it's easy, it's fast, but more importantly, it starts to develop habits. You brush your teeth every day, you put your clothes on every day, you put your socks on the same foot every day. Wouldn't it be wonderful that if our self-growth was like that every day? So the book, You Are Where Your Feet Are, available on Amazon. You can get it. It's a wonderful read. It's a fantastic gift for someone. Above that, you can get me on dailyexcellence.com, which is excellence with an X. The extra is the most important thing. And then Kevin Craggs 69 on Instagram, where I've just opened a YouTube channel. I've got all of 6 subscribers right now after a week. It's called The DX Squad. That's the Daily Excellence Squad, the DX Squad. So if you want to listen to some short, quick, thoughtful things that might just spark a little bit of energy or help you move from where you are to where you want to be, there's lots of things there.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant way to sort of sum it up to, everyone needs a little inspiration from time to time. It's not going to take you the whole journey, but it can get you started. And that's a big thing that most people just don't ever get started, right? You're never gonna sort of get to where you want to be physically, mentally, unless you embark on day one.
Yeah.
And keeping that momentum is huge.
And the thing is, I think we can all put our hands in. How many of us have got a screenshot of a quote on our phone? We like that quote, we screenshot it. The fact of the matter is what you're doing with it. Yeah. It's no good in your phone, and it may just trigger you for that minute or second. The thing that counts most in your life is action. What are you doing with it?
Kev, these podcasts are never long enough. I wish we had hours more together, and we'll do it again in the future. But I've loved catching up with you. Thank you so much for your time, guys. I hope you've really enjoyed having Kev on. As I say, go follow him in all his channels. Brilliant to hear you're kind of getting into the content game more and more. You'll be an incredible asset to golfers and just people out there. So thank you for the time today, buddy, and it's great to see you.
Yeah, appreciate you too, my friend.
Okay, guys, I really hope you've enjoyed this podcast with Kevin. As I'm sure you can imagine, great for me to connect with somebody who's been a lifelong mentor, friend, coach, and somebody who I think you guys can learn an awful lot from. So hope you've loved the episode today. Stay tuned for more next week on the Golf Asylum Podcast.